I want to go to a
Great
book,
conversation.
Marimba Ani, called Yurugu. And we're dealing with this whole socialist capitalist thing. Of course, what you talked about was Capitalism 101. This the buying of human beings to sell on the open market, the so-called free market. And it's been going on and on and on. So a lot of the things we're seeing today are the root of those things is the fight to keep this capitalist, elitist society intact. But Marimba Ani, brilliant sister, brilliant.
Yeah.
That book is brilliant. But Ife, could you just read that paragraph right there?
Sure. And of course, shouts out to Mama Marimba Ani. I hope that we can get her on the program one day. But this is a passage coming from her really seminal project and seminal book in terms of how we understand the culture of whiteness and the culture of white supremacy, a book by the name of Yurugu. And then she reads, to Reagan, Gaddafi is a mad dog who supports acts of terrorism against the free world in terms of Europe and European American interests. Therefore, Reagan could intentionally provoke Libya into a defensive attack by invading the Gulf of Sidra, 12 miles within Libya's coastline. Then, in retaliation, he could indiscriminately bomb the Libyan city of Tripoli, perhaps in an effort to assassinate Gaddafi. Reagan's act is called defending civilization, while Gaddafi is accused of supporting acts of terrorism. But those who are called terrorists by Europeans are people who have refused to accept the semantics of European ideology and the rules of European culture. In the view of these revolutionaries, Europeans are war criminals on trial for centuries of systematic exploitation, rape, and murder perpetuated against various majority peoples. Those whom the Europeans label terrorists understand that we are the fools if we accept the warmongers' rules of war. If indeed we wish to destroy their power to defeat us, we must deny them the right to judge us and our behavior. Who is Reagan to define our moral and even political terms of the world? It's always a matter of the entire civilized community being shocked by the barbaric acts. It is the barbarian now, as in ancient Rome, who is the true revolutionary, if only in the sense that he possesses the greatest threat to the European order. And that is
Pause
from
right
Marimba
there.
Ani.
So that's so interesting. Bring it forward. Now they're talking about Gaddafi because he was I would say, socialist. So they didn't kill him then. So then the Obama administration went in under the guise of the things that Marimba Ani laid out and murdered him. One second. And murdered him because of capitalism and socialism. And also, if you notice the connection when Reagan intimidated Libya by doing things on their border, what's happening today? Intimidation on what border? The Soviet Union border. Intimidate to provoke them to invade. And now I heard on Democracy Now! This morning, the wars against China. It's an economic war, a war to have economic power. So, yeah, Jan, this is all connected. Connect the dots.
Thank you so much for asking me that question.
Don't you love Sly? Don't you love
that? Wait, Gary's back. Before you do that, I want to play cut 2 real quick.
Play a couple, know that I gotta run.
We're going to play cut 2, redistribution of wealth. This is the last cut of. Well, as you see, it's all connected. It's all connected. What Martin Luther King was talking about, socialism. He was a socialist. People say he was a socialist. He was murdered because he was a socialist. That bridge you walked over because all this money is going to war and whatnot. So that's how I'm trying to connect this to that and show people the connection. People say, I don't want to hear this news. It doesn't affect me. It affects you directly when these folks take away your social security, when they take away your benefits and they put all that money into everything else. Jan, wrap it up.
Well, yeah, I understand this
You were in Alabama.
battle we have around capitalism and how it is deeply ingrained with slavery and with the economic system in this country, right? Because it was built on free labor, right? And I use that word free in italics because there has been a cost, right? And if you don't pay the cost today, you're gonna pay the cost tomorrow. If you don't pay the cost in money, you're absolutely gonna have some karma about this, right? When I caught the last few minutes of the news, they were talking about another train derailment because of capitalism, right? And those trains have toxic chemical loads that they're dumping into the atmosphere, dumping into the water, dumping into the air. So we're gonna pay for this capitalism, and it has deep, deep roots. It has deep roots in Ghana, in the West African countries, but it also has the whole coast of Africa all the way around, where they kidnapped, stole, tortured, and enslaved Black folks to bring them here because we had the knowledge, expertise, we had the muscle and spirit to work this land. We had to talk about the number of people they killed who lived here, right? The indigenous communities that were here already, that they infected with all type of disease and to move them off the land. So there's a deep heaviness, not only in Alabama, not only in Georgia, where they're trying to, wipe out a forest to build Cobb City, but it is throughout this land because they have not reckoned with the violence. They have not reckoned with the cruelty. They have not reckoned with that this economic social system is unkind and incompatible with humans, with human rights, with dignity and respect, with health and well-being, with saving this damn planet. So yeah, it's all connected. We don't have to go too far back in history, though we should, because if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. But we can look at how it is going down right here today. One of the things that we talked about while we were in Alabama is that they are still they are still sterilizing women in ICE detention centers in Georgia.
Wow.
Right? That didn't happen 100 years ago, 20 years ago. We're talking about stuff that's going on right now, right? So there are crimes against humanity that some folks don't have to answer for.
Domestic terrorism is alive and well. Yeah, we are connecting.
Well said. Well said. Thank you, Jan. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Jan Robinson-Flint, everybody. She's
all right. I'll talk to y'all later.
Director of Black Women for Wellness. All right. Be well.
And she's coming out of what part of Alabama, Sly? She's from
she's here in LA. She went down there for the march across the bridge.
Okay, right on, right on.
Yeah. So she's a local.
Okay, all right.
Socialism, oh my God. So domestic terrorism, we're going to talk about the terrorism going on within the United States, but we're going to, Ife, there's one other, I want to set this conversation up by you reading another passage from Marimba Ani's book, Urugu, where it says,
all right, yeah, stand by.
Yeah, take your time.
Yeah, this is 90.7, cut to the chase. And, we're talking about some real stuff today, and I love that we're able to keep this going with a profound historian, Marimba Ani. She's definitely one of our living legends. And she has a piece on socialism in her book, Urugu, and it reads about the redistribution of wealth. Am I on the same, we're on the same page, right, Sly?
It says those few who have, yeah. Take it away.
So here we go. Again, we're talking about socialism, and Marimba Ani says that those few who have come to understand the principles of the Europeans' attitudes and behavior towards the cultural other are considered to be paranoid, hateful, extreme, and violent by the rest who still relate to the European facade. Since European laws never worked for the cultural other anyway, the best thing for non-Europeans to do is to ignore them. That was one of the lessons of the Mississippi experience that Black people learned at the Democratic National Convention in 1964, much to the embarrassment of the Democratic Party, that its rules for the election of delegates were not meant to include Mississippi, that the whites of that state would be upheld in their attempt to exclude Blacks, because to do otherwise would indeed accept the order of the convention. The separation of morality and law, the phenomenon of mass hypocrisy, the separation of emotional commitment from action are all encouraged by the European tradition in the use of words without meaning. To be civilized is to be able to hide one's true motives, and civilization is the appearance of a moral order that does not exist. If these things are understood, then it is more easily realized that to be a cultural other implies that there are no laws that govern or inhibit the European behavior towards you. Oh, wow. This is why I love Mama Marimba, because she brings it full circle, definitely. And I love this juxtaposition between those who are for the people being the terrorists and those who are in power being the victors. And just to see how this legacy in Mississippi has continuously grown since this convention in 1964.
It's a new light now. Right now, our next guest we're going to bring on in a second is Devin Branch. There's battles in Mississippi. There's battles in Los Angeles. Of course, we remember Kevin De Leon was taken out because of racism. And
they got caught talking
City
on the
Council
phone.
was taken out because they tried to gerrymander the city to weaken the Black vote. They talked about indigenous and Native Americans. So that battle is going on in Los Angeles. That battle is going on in DC right now with Biden. Biden going with the Democrats to not allow people in DC to vote for themselves, to be autonomous. It's just going on and on and on. And also, you can roll that music, just music underneath. Yeah, I like that little music underneath us as we're getting ready to bring on our next guest, Devin Branch, when we're having this conversation on it's basically economics. We see that Mississippi, they beat Fannie Lou Hamer. They beat her, literally. Now, like 50, 60 years later, they're attacking Jackson, Mississippi in a different way.
Yeah.
And we're going to come back with our next guest right after this. This is KPFK Los Angeles, 90.7 FM, 90.7 FM in Santa Barbara, 93.7 FM in San Diego County, 99.5 FM Ridgecrest, China Lake, and we're streaming live on kpfk.org.
Nothing. Open up the door. I guess myself.
Go on, James. KPFK Los Angeles, cut to the chase. On the line, we have Devin Branch. Devin.
All the way from, we're from Jackson, Mississippi, right, Devin? What representing? What's up? Sip. Good to have you.
Devin Branch is a new African nationalist and a member of the Jackson Undivided Coalition.
Welcome to Cut to the Chase.
Thank you for having me.
And we talked about the cities, in Los Angeles has their problems. All these cities, they're just trying to minimalize through gerrymandering the vote. They're trying to stay in power. We call it white supremacy. We need an update on what's going down in Mississippi. It's been going on for a while, whereas now I think they're trying to take power away from the Democratic elected mayor, Chokwe Lumumba, and put it in the hands of the state. Is that correct?
This is absolutely correct. And this is just the latest phase of the neo-Confederate assault on the city of Jackson. So this fight against Jackson did not begin with this legislative session, which began this January. It began with the emergence of New African or Black, as some would call, but New African political power asserting itself in the city of Jackson. Once New African people in Jackson began to elect their own political leadership, once the neo-Confederate, historically in power, white ruling class began to lose their grip on power, then they began to assault the city of Jackson by initially denying resources, but ultimately seeking to alter the entire structure of government in order that things that had historically been the purview of the municipal government would be taken out of the hands of the municipal government once the people of the city of Jackson democratically chose leadership that reflected their interests and were not in alignment with the interests of neo-Confederate white state power in the state of Mississippi.
Wow. So how are they doing that? What is the actual mechanism that they are trying to disempower the legislative body of Jackson? How? Because I've heard so many different things, and some of it just seems they can't be able to do that. That just sounds crazy. But can you tell us more? What is the mechanism that they're using? Or maybe it's more than one.
Absolutely. Well, there are several things. So this legislative session has really been, an attack on Jackson. There's been a lot of bills that came out attacking Jackson and the local ability of locally elected people to control what happens in the city of Jackson. But one of the bills that has gotten the most attention has been House Bill 1020. And what that bill proposes to do was to expand, initially, the House version of the bill would expand the Capital Improvement District, the Capital Complex Improvement District, which is an area around the state capital of Jackson right now, that is policed currently by the Capitol Police, that was brought into being, I believe, in 2017, under the guise of doing infrastructure improvement, beautification around the Capitol, right? That was the Trojan horse that allowed them to create an infrastructure that they're now seeking to expand to still power and expand the power of state police, the Capitol Police, over the city of Jackson. So what this bill, HB 1020, would have done in its initial form was carve out a portion of Jackson to expand the district that's in the northeastern portion of the city. Now, this expanded capital district, and there are maps that show it, would have included 80% of the white population of Jackson.
Wow.
So it was effectively seeking to set up an apartheid style system where the Capitol Police would police that area in the expanded capital district. They would also have a new court system created that would not have any elected judges. Those judges were to have been appointed by the Chief Justice of the Mississippi Supreme Court, though there are no other, and though they would have the same powers effectively as circuit court judges who are elected in the state of Mississippi. No other judges in the state that would have had that power are appointed. But this would have been the dynamic according to the House version of the bill. They would have appointed judges, appointed prosecutors for that district. And those judges and those prosecutors would have authority of anything that occurred or accrued within the Capital District. And disputes, civil and criminal, would have been funneled into those courts. And that could have also impacted things like contracting within the city of Jackson. You could then take your issue to the court with the white appointed judge, the white appointed litigants, the white appointed court staff, and perhaps have an outcome that would be different than if you took it to elected judges, elected by overwhelmingly New African community. So that was in the initial version of the bill. Now, there have been some amendments to the bill as the bill went from the House and passed the House to the Senate. Now, it's worth mentioning that with the exception of the one white member of the Hinds County delegation, every member of the Hinds County delegation opposed this bill. The bill, HB 1020, was authored and put forward by an individual from Senatobia, Mississippi, a white man named Trey Lamar, who lives around 200 miles outside of the city of Jackson. So, but they brought this bill in under the guise of trying to provide for enhanced public safety. What they've been doing is promoting this idea that Jackson is this unlivably dangerous place, right? And that the people and the city government of Jackson has not the capacity to address these situations. And so that they're going to come in on our behalf. This is how they're saying it on the floor of the Senate, because they care about the city of Jackson.
Devin,
Right.
that's so interesting because that's a narrative that's going around the country under the guise of, it used to be war on drugs, now it's war on crime. So,
Absolutely.
it's criminal. We have to.
It's always just been a war on New African people.
Exactly.
And they use different labels depending on, what's hot at the time effectively. So at present, they know that crime, there in every poor community and in many New African poor communities, we do have challenges with public safety. This is a fact. But what are the answers to these problems? They're not seeking to address those problems. What we do not need and what we do not want is an increase of state police that have no accountability to the people of Jackson and who have already killed people in Jackson and have not been held accountable for it. So we do not need that, and we do not want that expansion. And if they were really concerned about addressing the issues of public safety in Jackson, they would have consulted the residents and the community stakeholders and the elected officials in Jackson before authoring this bill. And when you see the debate, and you can watch them because it's on YouTube, actually, the Mississippi State Legislature has a YouTube channel. And when they were debating it in the House, members of the Black Caucus and members of the Hinds County delegation, and they did it the same in the Senate, would ask, have you consulted the judges in Hinds County? Have you talked to and tried to work with the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, or other people who are stakeholders and who are involved even in the public safety sector in the court system within Hinds County and in Jackson, Mississippi? And universally, they say, no, they have not. So if you are seeking to address an issue, genuinely seeking to address the issue of public safety, then why would you not consult the people who are dealing on a day-to-day basis with the issue of public safety, both from the governmental standpoint and from the community standpoint? And if this was a bill that would address it, why is it that the overwhelming majority of the people of Jackson are in opposition to it?
And
is it at all reasonable to think Trey Lamar cares more about our safety than we do? We who live in
the state capital in Mississippi, and it has 83%. I'm reading these statistics here. 83% Black majority which is among the highest of any major city in America. And then also, it looks like it's power, economic, the water in the airport. Could you mention that a little bit?
Well, yes. So there have also been in the past and presently. So there have been in the past, and this is still going on, attempts to take control of the airport away from the city of Jackson. Really, it's an attempt to take control of everything that is valuable, that still is under the control of the people of Jackson, out from under the control of the people of Jackson. So they want to maintain all of the power that they had over the city of Jackson when they were the majority and had power, without having to be in Jackson and live with us. And which we're not exactly keen to have them back in Jackson. They can stay where they are, but nevertheless, this is the idea that this is just another attempt to do that. And not just the airport was a situation as well, which is ongoing. They're not giving up that fight. But in this legislative session, they have also put forward bills that would further take power over things like the water system in Jackson. And they have stated that their primary goal is just to make sure that Jackson does not control the water.
Wow.
So this is,
and they state this openly. This is something that you can Google and hear and read articles where the governor is saying the important thing is that the people of Jackson not control the water system in the city of Jackson.
That's Devin Branch. We're talking to him. You can join the conversation, 818-985-5735. This is a microcosm of the macrocosm. In other words, what's happening in Jackson, Mississippi is happening all over the place. We started out the show talking about socialism and how it's being attacked vehemently around in the United States on local and federal levels. What would you consider Jacksonville with the administration you have it now? Would you consider that socialist?
I wouldn't consider the administration socialist. I would say that because we are still operating, unfortunately, within the capitalist framework, right? And so they don't have the control over the means of production. But I think that the ethic that guides some of the actions being taken in Jackson, whether that was under the previous Mayor Chokwe Lumumba, the father, or under the current administration, has certainly been influenced by a socialist ethic, an ethic that's rooted in wanting to improve the quality of life for the New African working class people and make a city that's more hospitable and welcoming and addresses the needs of working class people. So this is part of it. And in fact, there were, during the administration of the father, Chokwe Lumumba, people saying that he was trying to turn Jackson into Cuba.
Wow.
And which some of us might welcome more than others, right? And people have said similar things right now. So they are absolutely hostile to a progressive approach to the problems of the people of Jackson, an approach that's not rooted in the needs of capital, but in the needs of people. And this is central to what's happening. And this is one of the reasons why they're so keen to make sure that people who are going to be moving forward in positions are not as subject to pressures from the local overwhelmingly New African population. This is why they want appointed judges. And even under the Senate version of the bill, because the House version of the bill is what created the initial uproar. When it went to the Senate, they sought to change it, not to change, in my opinion, the essence of what they were seeking to get at, but to make it more palatable to the public, to make it seem as if the Senate is somehow better and looking out better for the interests of people than the House was. But many of the things remain. And so, for instance, they took out the boundaries of the district, but under the Senate version of the bill, you would still have 5 appointed circuit court judges who would be considered temporary circuit court judges through 2026. That means from now until in another 2 years, the majority of the circuit court judges in Hinds County would be unelected by the people of Hinds County.
Wow.
That would mean logically, it could follow that if you have 5 unelected judges and you came before a court, you would be more likely to come before an unelected judge than one that was elected. And given the already inherent disparities in the criminal legal system that exists for poor and working class New African people, having these appointed judges who have no need to be concerned about the potential for backlash from the New African electorate in Jackson puts people in a very precarious and dangerous situation.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Cut to the Chase, 90.7 KPFK, of course, the one and only Sly Rivers and your girl, Ife Jai. We got Devin Branch all the way from Jackson, Mississippi, breaking it down. And, we like to get straight to the point. I think what's so powerful is that as we talk about this thing called socialism, as we talk about the power of the people, it's so refreshing to be able to see that we're not crazy, that these are really things that are being intentionally done to our community to undermine our power and our autonomy. And I think Jackson, Mississippi is just another example of that. It's so many things that you said, and even in terms of the water, the first thing that my brain thought of was the Palestinian-Israeli issue, and water becomes an issue there.
Michigan, don't forget Flint. Was it Flint where they appointed somebody to oversee the city?
In Detroit, are you talking Flint? Flint?
The whole water problem we had there.
Yeah, this water thing is a consistent. It makes me. I think the word that I want to say is almost like a sabotage of the resources. How can I starve these communities out and create more disparity? And resources is absolutely an essential one. And what is one of our most fundamental basic resources is our water. And not only that, what it sounds like, and I'm gonna cut to the chase. With this bill, HB 1020, they're just essentially trying to recreate their own town, their own control, their own space that's outside of Jackson, that it seeks to adhere to the interests of the white Jacksonian population. And how outrageous, how the audacity. It's always, fascinating to see white supremacy at its finest, but the idea that, hey, we don't have to do this. We don't have to be a part of this New African model, if you will, of empowerment and autonomy, and of course, much love to the Lumumba family. I know that Rukia Lumumba, Chokwe Lumumba, and Nubia Lumumba's daughter, who is a sister to the current mayor, Chokwe Antar Lumumba. I know that she's getting ready to run for state representative as well. So, shouts out to the whole Lumumba tribe for just continuing.
And of course, she's also a leader in this fight.
The
Jackson Undivided Coalition, I don't know if it would exist without the leadership of Rukia Lumumba.
This fight is so interesting because it crosses over. They use race to make it to divide and conquer. When I was young, we had unions, and the unions in Canton, Ohio, were actually integrated. You didn't have to like your white union workers or the black, but they were integrated because they knew that's where the power was. Now you're seeing this attempt to get rid of unions I mean, it's going on with Amazon and Starbucks, and which is a type of, okay, let's unite socially to have power. And so I'm looking at Jackson, Mississippi, and this is the ongoing attack on people organizing themselves, people organizing on the grassroots level. So not controlled, manipulated, exploited by the corporations and the idea of American exceptionalism.
Right. And so
unfortunately, right now you have white people,
Mhm.
Asian people who don't understand the connection of the unity. So I rather, I don't want to be in no union because, they voted it down because of the lies and the lies. We're living in a society that just lies about everything. 818-985-5735. If you want to join in the conversation, go ahead, Ife.
Right.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm just curious, where are we at in the efforts to stop the bill? I see we're on, so we're on the Zoom call because we're all over the place today. So shouts out for Sly for holding it down at the studio. But I'm here on the Zoom in Atlanta, and I'm looking at Devin on the Zoom call, and I see this button. And I'm collecting buttons, Devin. You got to send me one in the mail, man. But
We will
the
send
truth
you a
is
button. We just made
yeah,
this
right.
2 days
I got to
ago.
get a button, man. But so where are we? Where are we in the efforts? How close are we to stopping this bill? Where we are? Give us.
So I can tell you where the bill is. Now, how close we are to stopping it is another question. So there is a Republican supermajority in both the House and the Senate. So they could pass this bill with not a single vote from a single Democrat or a single New African in the House or the Senate.
Wow.
So right now the bill has passed the House. It's passed the Senate in an amended form. So it very likely will end up in a conference committee. So it's going back to the House. The House could pass the Senate version of the bill, but the author of the bill, Trey Lamar, stated that that's not likely to happen. The bill will end up in conference. And so they have until basically the end of the session to get this done. We are fighting an uphill fight, but we are gaining momentum. So there are people who are going to the Capitol every day demonstrating their opposition to the bill. And what we have noticed is when people fill the gallery, they have tended to table the bill and not even discuss it when we've had the gallery filled, especially in the Senate. So we are still calling on people to go and fill up the gallery. But they're also, it's not just HB 1020. What they did was they took portions of HB 1020 that were taken out of the Senate version, and they added those portions to another bill. So there's Senate Bill 2343, which initially drafted would expand the jurisdiction of the Capitol Police throughout the city of Jackson.
Wow.
Right? And within these bills, both 1020 and 2343, the Capitol Police would have if there were disputes of jurisdiction between the city of Jackson and the Capitol Police, those disputes would be resolved in favor of the Capitol Police. In fact, I believe in the Senate version of the 1020, it said all disputes would be resolved in favor of the Capitol Police.
Wow. Wow.
And so this is being fought, both 1020 and 2343, which could be taken up by the legislature again as soon as next week. But I think it's important that we understand that whether or not these bills pass, the opposition to these bills should not end. Yeah. So this is not a situation where if they are able to be passed into law, that the resistance against them should stop. These things are unacceptable. What you would be doing by expanding the Capitol Police throughout the city of Jackson would be imposing really an occupation force on the people of Jackson without their consent whatsoever.
Yeah, thank you, Devin Branch, all the way from Jackson, Mississippi, man. This is a powerful conversation, and I'm so glad that we're able to have it because it allows us to connect the dots. Like I mentioned, I'm here in Atlanta. We just went to a Cop City rally last night, and it's the same conversation over and over, different cities, but the same rhetoric. There's an idea and an illusion of safety being needed, and then there's this kind of a superficial solution that they offer us based on that need for safety, and so we want to continue to support the efforts in Jackson, and if there's folks that are, have family members and listeners that are definitely connected to Jackson, y'all need to go sit in a gallery one day, take a shift, man, because that seems like the people power is what is really is going to make the difference, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Well, thank you very much. And if you also have the time, go on Facebook and search JXN Undivided. And there's a Facebook group there where you can find more information.
Hey, Devin, before you go, I wanted you've mentioned a couple of times, New African, you were New African. Tell our audience what that means. You said the New African population. A lot of them.
Okay. So the New African population are the Africans who live in, well, I would define a New African as those of us who have our origins in this hemisphere as a consequence of the slave trade, that at the same time that effectively a new European nation was being built in this society as a consequence of European colonialism, when we were brought over here from the many tribes and nations of Africa, a new African nation was being built with a common language, a common culture, a shared historical experience, rooted on a common territory. And that territory we would identify as the southern eastern portion of the area currently governed by the United States government: Mississippi, Louisiana, South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, and portions of the territory that may extend outside of those rigid state boundaries. But we would say that those of us who are the descendants of those people who were enslaved in that region are not just Americans who are discriminated against, that we are a people, we're a nation. And we have rights not only to civil rights and equality under their law, but we have a right as a nation to exercise our right to self-governance and self-determination up to and including independence. So I am one of the people who say that we should struggle to make that real, that we should struggle to end American rule over our lives before American rule puts an end to us. That we should be a self-governing people and that we should struggle to rise ourselves to our full height among the community of nations. And so that is what I mean when I say New African. I mean those of us who would colloquially be called Black in this society. But that doesn't speak to the national question. And I think that's the missing component to understanding what we're dealing with here and as a people throughout this empire. And I think it also speaks to that class question that you mentioned about why do whites and others not unite on class basis with New African people, especially in the South. But if you look all over the world, wherever you have a settler state, the poor and the working class of the settler state have never sided with the oppressed nation. So you don't see.
Excuse me.
Right. So in South Africa, you did not see whites who were less well off on a mass level siding with the anti-apartheid struggle. You do not see Israeli workers siding in any mass way with the Palestinians. You don't see that anywhere you don't see that in the north of Ireland, where you don't have the same kind of cultural or what people might term racial difference between the nationalist and the unionist population in the north of Ireland. Working class unionists side against their class interest with the interests of British imperialism, against the struggle for self-determination of the people of Ireland. So even when so-called race is not a factor, you never have a situation where the settler population finds itself in league in any significant numbers with the oppressed nation.
Devin, thank you so much.
That contradiction is so.
Devin, we have just a couple of minutes left, so we're going to wrap up.
Well said. This is
New
great.
African nationalist and a member of the Jackson Undivided Coalition. Solutions. Well, that you're in a battle, so you're reacting to a situation that you have to conquer. But give us some other solutions that you can think of as this battle. No time. Okay. Well, we have 1 minute left. We have 60 seconds left. This is Cut to the Chase. We've been talking to Devin Branch. Thank you so much for.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Right. Well, one solution: continue the struggle and prepare for protracted struggle.
Right on.
That's the solution.
Right on. Well said.
Okay,
said,
so we have to
90.7.
continue, allude to continue. I think we did last week with allude to continue. And
Yeah, we
each one-
did.
each
Yeah, we
one,
did.
people have to know we're wrapping up. This is KPFK Los Angeles 90.7 FM. This is Cut to the Chase. We'll be back next week.
See you next time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, myself.